Welcome to GDs. And this is Slow Horses, Season 2. Season starts with a former agent, Dickie B, seeming to recognize someone from his past. As Dickie decides to follow the man he suspects, we get to see in a flashback that the person whom he is following is someone who grabbed and tortured him for information years back. The chase leads Dickie onto a crowded bus. Being on the bus, he suddenly starts to feel pain in his chest. Knowing he will be going down, he types a message on his phone and hides it, moments before his last breath. The next day, as news of Dickie passing away reaches Lamb, he goes to the bus where his body was found. Lamb, looking around, was able to find the phone, which Dickie stashed. As he goes through his phone, he finds that the last text that Dickie typed was a single word, cicada, and seeing the same, he was quite shocked. On the other hand, we get to see two new members in Slough House, Shirley Dander, sent there because of her anger and drug issues, and Marcus Longridge, sent there because of his gambling addiction. We also get to see Guy and Harper, who are now dating, and are being roped in by Webb for an assignment. Webb wants them to provide security for an off-the-books meeting with Arkady Pushkin, who is a representative of Nevsky, a Russian oligarch. Harper was a bit confused by the same, as Nevsky opposes the regime in Moscow, so they officially had to keep their distance from him. It is when Webb tells them that he was approached by a freelancer Krimov, who informed him about Pushkin wanting to meet, and since they want to know what he has to offer, a face-to-face off-the-books meeting has been fixed, where he will be meeting Pushkin, the right hand of Nevsky. Thus for the same, they need to secure the meeting venue. Guy, finally getting something important to do, takes the job, despite Harper not being sure. Finally, we also get to see Cartwright, as he gives interviews for trying to get into a private intelligence agency. Later, as the Slough House regroups, Lamb tells them about Dickie passing away, and he thinks that there was foul play. But Guy was apprehensive, as the coroner report says, he died because of a heart attack. But with Lamb pushing, they go through the footage of Dickie's final moments. In the footage, they suspected that Dickie was following someone. But with them not having the complete footage, Lamb sends Shirley to retrieve the same. He also sidelines Cartwright, knowing that he is looking to switch. A disheartened Cartwright goes to his grandfather, and talking with him, he learns that before the German wall came down, Dickie claimed that he was abducted by the Russians, who wanted to know from him if MI5 knew about cicadas, which in theory were Russian sleeper agents embedded in British society, and the program's alleged mastermind was Alexander Popov. But the MI5 dismissed it as a hoax, as no sleeper agents were found. In addition, they also found no proof of any Russian agent ever existing with the name Popov. Despite Dickie's claim that he was force-fed brandy and was tortured, no one believed him, and fearing he might have defected, he was fired, and the matter of cicadas was considered to be a story implanted by the Russians. Cartwright, learning the same, returns back. While Shirley was able to access the footage from the train, as well as the station, on the day Dickie died. Seeing the footage, they were able to find a bald man that Dickie was following. As they looked further, they saw that the bald man was able to get behind Dickie on the train, and he tapped his arm. Later in the footage, Dickie could be seen rubbing his arm. Seeing this, Cartwright was sure that Dickie was poisoned by an untraceable drug, which caused his heart attack. He then goes to Lamb, and tells him what he learned, and asks him to put him on the case. Lamb, wanting to find out what happened, and seeing Cartwright's enthusiasm, tells him to keep following the leads. While he goes to see Nikolai Katinsky, a former Russian agent, living in exile in London, after defecting at the end of the Cold War. Katinsky confirms to him that the rumors about cicada were true, as he once overheard Popov demanding the cicada program to remain funded after the fall of the Soviet Union. In addition, his description of the man Popov was speaking to, Andrei Chernitsky, matches Dickie's killer. Katinsky tells him that he tried to tell the same when he defected, but the MI5 dismissed it, thinking it was a hoax, as he didn't have any specific information. Knowing the same, Lamb seeks Taverner's help in order to investigate Dickie's death. Taverner dismisses the notion of cicadas, but knowing that Lamb helped her get out of her mess, agrees to provide him a working cover. On the other hand, Cartwright, following the breadcrumbs of the killer, was able to track him to a taxi stand. Cartwright, using his persuasion skills, was able to find that the bald man took the taxi to a flying club in Upshot. In addition, he was also able to find his phone number. And as Roddy tracks his number, he finds that the number is presently in Estonia. Lamb, knowing Upshot will have a connection with cicadas, gives Cartwright a cover identity. Cartwright later checks in at a pub in Upshot, with a cover of being a journalist, visiting the small village, as he wants to write a story about it. Meanwhile, Guy and Harper go to meet with the security team of Poshkin, in order to finalize a plan for the security sweep, as well as the meeting, scheduled to take place in the glass house. Harper, not trusting the Russians, decides to follow them. Harper sees them picking a package on their way, but later, he loses them. As he returns back, he gets in an argument with Guy, as she was not happy with him following the Russians. After the argument, Harper leaves to meet with his son. But his son was not able to come, as he was not well. Having time in hand, Harper decided to look for the Russians again, in the general area where he lost them. Call and Pietra, the Russian agents, catch him snooping around, but they were not upset. Instead, they sit down with him to drink. Later, we see a drunk Harper leaving. We then see Lamb getting a call from Duffy, who informs him that one of his agents is dead. As Lamb and Standish reach the scene, they find that it was Harper who died in an accident. Rebecca, the woman who ran him over, claimed that he came out of nowhere and crashed with her car. With Harper being drunk, the police investigation treated it as a drunken crash. But Lamb was suspicious, thus he takes Harper's watch, and as he returns back, he gives it to Roddy, wanting him to find out where all Harper went that day. While he starts to look into Rebecca. Back in Upshot, Cartwright learns about the village from Kelly, the pub's bartender. She tells him that her parents settled in the village, as they wanted to be away from the hustle of the city. In addition, he also learns that she is the daughter of the flying club's owner Duncan. Kelly, wanting to show Cartwright her village, takes him on a joy ride in a plane. As they get back on the ground, Cartwright figured out that Kelly's father Duncan secretly went through his phone and wallet, which he left behind on the ground. He then informs Lamb about his suspicion of Flying Club's owner. While he learns from him the tragic news of Harper passing away, Guy, despite being in grief, decided to continue with the security arrangement for Webb's operation, with Marcus stepping in to replace Harper. They first go to meet Poshkin, and seeing him talk about Harper, she gets a bit suspicious. But despite her suspicion, she along with Marcus, Kirill, and Pietra, scan and secure the meeting place. Later, Guy meets with Poshkin, and talking with him, she was convinced that he had something to do with Harper's death. Lamb on the other hand, tracks down Rebecca, and knowing about her financials, he knew she had been paid off. Lamb offers her protection, in exchange for the truth. Rebecca, being afraid, tells Lamb that Harper never died in the crash. Indeed, he was murdered, in the presence of Call, Pietra, Andre, and a mysterious fourth figure she couldn't see. And later, his body was staged to look like an accident. Roddy, Standish, and Shirley, wanting to find Chernitsky, go over CCTV footage, and they realize that Chernitsky never left the country. While at the park, Taverner learns about Harper passing away, and was apprehensive about Webb's operation. In addition, with Peter Judd being promoted to Home Secretary, he wants her to accompany him for a speech, and he wants to do so, in order to prove to her, who is in charge now. Meanwhile in Upshot, Kelly invites Cartwright for lunch at her house, and she tells him that her mother wants to make a good impression of the village on him. As Cartwright reaches their house for lunch, his suspicion about Duncan grew even more. But before he could leave, Alex, Kelly's mother, introduces him with an old friend, who just reached there, and he was indeed Chernitsky himself. Back in the city, Lamb goes to see Katinsky again, but he was not in his office. Though he anticipated Lamb coming there. He calls Lamb, and tells him that the Russians wanted him to keep him distracted, in exchange for facing no repercussions for his defection decades earlier, and that's what he has been doing. Lamb, realizing the depths of the deception, leaves his office. Lamb then retraces Harper's final steps, and finds the location where the Russian picked up a package. He then finds that the package was delivered to Poshkin's boss Nevsky, who has already arrived in the country. Knowing this, Lamb along with Shirley go to Nevsky's house. Being there, and seeing no security, they decided to go in. And as they searched the premises, they were surprised to find Nevsky gruesomely murdered by a radiation injection. In addition, his thumb was also missing. Guy on the other hand, wanting revenge, sets out to kill Poshkin, but Marcus stops her, as he's been tailing her on Lamb's orders. Lamb tells Guy that her suspicions are correct, but there is much more at stake. And in order for them to uncover the complete truth, she needs to continue doing her job. He then assures her that they will avenge Harper's death, and Guy reluctantly agrees to continue providing security for the meeting between Webb and Poshkin. Back in Upshot, as Chernitsky decided to leave, Cartwright puts his phone in his pocket and asks Roddy to trace it. Roddy is able to trace his phone to the Flying Club. Knowing the same, Cartwright reaches there, and he sees Chernitsky talking with Katinsky, standing beside components, which can be used to make a bomb. As Cartwright asks them to surrender, Alex, Kelly's mother, reaches there, and she knocks out Cartwright. The next day, as Cartwright regains consciousness, he finds himself tied up, as he hears a plane leave. While back in the city, Taverner along with Judd, leaves for the Royal Exchange, where he will be giving his speech, while a protest will also be taking place. Guy and Marcus accompany Webb to the Glass House for his meeting. Lamb blackmails Duffy, in order to get him into the records department at Regent's Park, as he wanted to see the intake document of Katinsky, wanting to know more details about him. Standish, on the other hand, uses the details from the Nevsky file to arrange a meeting with Krimov, an information dealer. In order to get information on Nevsky, she agrees to play a game of chess with him. Wherein, if she wins, he will spill what he knows, but if she loses, she will take a shot of vodka, a dangerous temptation for someone battling alcoholism. Back in the village, Cartwright is eventually found by Duncan and Kelly. Cartwright tells them that Alex is actually a Russian sleeper agent, planning a devastating attack. After proving his true identity, they untie him and try to reach Alex, hoping to stop her. But with Alex not answering, Cartwright calls in Code September, an emergency alert, signaling an imminent attack from an aircraft. Taverner, knowing the seriousness of the call, makes Judd leave the venue, while the police tries to disperse the crowd in the immediate area around the Glass House. With Standish winning the game, she learns that it was Katinsky who was the mastermind behind all of the events, and he was the one who wanted Slough House involved, as he wanted to get to someone in Slough House. Knowing this, and seeing Katinsky's intake file, Lamb figures out that it is indeed Katinsky who is Popov, the spymaster behind the Cicada program, and he passed himself off as a junior bureaucrat when defecting. At the Glass House meeting, as evacuation alarm activates, Poshkin pulls out a gun. Guy explains to Webb that Poshkin is likely a Russian agent, and has already killed Nevsky. Poshkin shoots Webb, but before he could shoot others, Marcus pulls out a gun he hid, and fires back. But Poshkin escapes with Pyotr, and locks the room, and leaves Kirill behind. Guy interrogates a dying Kirill, and she learns that Poshkin and his associates planned to drain Nevsky's accounts, and since it could only be done from his office in the building, they kept the meeting in the Glass House. In addition, the evacuation alarm will give them time to work, without being disturbed. Cartwright, on the other hand, realizes that the bomb he saw was still there. He calls Taverner to have the Code September retracted, but with Alex not responding, she was not willing to do so. But at the point of no return, Alex diverts her course, and responds to comms, diffusing the situation. Guy and Marcus are finally able to break out, and they find that Poshkin has already transferred all of Nevsky's funds, using his thumbprint. In addition, he also broke into his safe. But before he could leave, Guy confronts him on the rooftop. As Poshkin was about to shoot her, Marcus takes him down, and we find that he took diamonds from Nevsky's safe. Meanwhile, Roddy and Sherlin, following Cartwright's phone, were able to track Chernitsky, and have been following him. Roddy informs Cartwright that Chernitsky's destination is Tunbridge Wells. Knowing this, Cartwright urges Kelly to fly him there, as it is where his grandfather stays. While Chernitsky ambushes Roddy on the train, but Sherlin is able to save him. Though in the process, Chernitsky manages to get away. With Lamb knowing the true identity of Katinsky, he finally confronts him at his office. It is when Katinsky reveals that outside of his part in the Glass House plot, he also intended to destroy Lamb, as he wanted to avenge Charles' partner. It is when we learn that Charles' partner was indeed a mole for the Russians in MI5, and that's why Lamb took him out. Katinsky then tells him that since it was not only him who was responsible for Charles but also David Cartwright, he too will soon be killed. But it turns out that Lamb already warned David, and he took down Chernitsky. And as his grandson reached there, he was quite surprised. Realizing he has been outmaneuvered, Katinsky pushes Lamb to kill him. But Lamb leaves Katinsky with one bullet for his revolver, and Katinsky kills himself. With things settling down, Taverner and Judd create a cover story for the Code September hoax, blaming it publicly on a security glitch, and implicating the Prime Minister, thereby improving Judd's odds against him in the next leadership election. In exchange, Taverner wants his support for becoming first desk, when the time is right. And as the season ends, we see Lamb, and the other slow horses, breaking into a church, and they hide a plaque for Harper behind a bench. And as they leave, Lamb adds a handwritten note, commemorating Dickie B's service. Thanks for watching. And if you liked it, please subscribe.